Hello and welcome to Mostly Vintage Cameras. This is a Film Never Die Nana camera. Now I just made a video about this camera and frankly I waffled on far too long and it wasn't very good, so I'm making this new video, which you will see hopefully, and I'm going to try and be a lot more succinct and directly address some of the issues that some people have raised online about the FND Nana. So one of the first criticisms this camera has is it's exactly the same as a camera you can buy on Alibaba for $30 US, but it's many times the price. The problem with that argument is that it's not exactly the same camera. This is based on the MCAM F301. It actually has a lot of parts with it, and FND have said as much. However, FND have also made some significant changes to this, in the same way that some Audi cars might be very similar to a Volkswagen Golf, but it's very much a different car. It's very much a different brand, different styling and all the rest of it. The other thing with the $30 Alibaba camera is that you can't buy one for $30. That's what you might call the factory gate price. So Alibaba is a website where manufacturers effectively tout for business, particularly Chinese manufacturers. So if you want to make a camera like this or brand a camera like this is your starting point. They say, we make cameras, prices start from $30. But when you look more carefully, there's a minimum order of 1,000 pieces. Now I've worked in purchasing before. If there's a from price, that's the lowest price you can buy, and if there's a minimum quantity price, that's the minimum you have to buy, and you don't get the from price at the minimum quantity. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you could buy 1,000 pieces for $30 each. Well, now you need $30,000 to buy your $30 camera. So you need $30 plus 999 close and personal friends who also want to buy a camera. But you still can't buy it for $30 because that's the factory gate price, and unless you're planning on going there yourself to pick up your 1,000 cameras, you're going to have to pay for shipping, import duty, sales tax, and so on and so forth. So your $30 camera really is a bit of a misnomer. So that's the first criticism people have levelled at this, which, whilst it has some basis in fact in that this is based on that camera, this is not that camera. Next up, a lot of people will say, gosh, that's expensive, you can get much better values buying a second-hand camera. Well, yes, you can. You can also get a broken camera buying a second-hand camera. People that are buying this type of camera, these reusable sort of upgrades from a single-use camera, if you will, they're not necessarily got a lot of experience in the photographic and particularly the film camera world, and they might not want to trawl through eBay adverts and hope the descriptions are accurate and hope that it's reasonably clean when they get it and hope that battery corrosion isn't apparent and hope that it doesn't have a light leak. They just want to buy a camera and take some photographs, and what's wrong with that? Why not buy a new camera? So it should come as no surprise to anyone that second-hand cameras, second-hand goods in general, can be cheaper than new goods. And that's all people are saying when they say, oh, you could get better value buying a second-hand camera. Well, go figure. That's also true for your Audi and your Volkswagen cars as well. But I think we all know that when we buy second-hand cameras and second-hand cars, there can be some surprises. So, with that said, let's crack on and see how this works. And we're going to start as ever by putting a battery in, and the battery just sits under this little panel here. Pull this down, take our battery, and you want to pay attention to this little tab. You want to make sure that that's on the outside of the battery, because when you come to take the battery out again, that will come in very handy. Having put our battery in, we should load a film. The film door is just here, and film loading is pretty simple. Now, I said reusable cameras are kind of an alternative to single-use or disposable cameras, and that's true. And Film Never Die view this camera, the Nana, as an upgrade to the, if you like, basic reusable camera. They want it to be a bit posher and a bit better. To fire the shutter and wind on, we need to open the lens cover, fire, 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 and away we go. Now, comparing it to a disposable camera, you can't misload the film in a disposable camera. It's already loaded. You can't open the film back halfway through. You can't rewind it incorrectly. So if you are very new to film photography and you want to guarantee not to get it wrong sort of situation, disposable cameras have their place. But with a reusable or reloadable camera, of course you get a much wider choice of film that you can use, and you can sort of grow into it to a certain degree. And with this camera in particular, it's got one additional feature, let's say, that does help out quite a lot. It's also a lot more stylish. Do you want to turn up with a plastic camera, or do you want to turn up with something that's gold and shiny and new? So moving on, what else do we have here? So you might notice there's a slight purple bloom to the lens, and some people have said, well, even if you're going to buy a reusable camera, don't buy this one, it's far too expensive. It's exactly the same as this Harman EZ35 or the Kodak S88. The Kodak retails at about £79. This is a little bit hard to say what it costs. When I first got this in February, it was on the FND website at £101. Then it went to £175, and currently it's £145. And that seems to be the price it most usually is at. So I'm going to say that's £145. Now this one is it's discontinued now, so they are being discounted because they're old and discontinued. But when it first came out, it was £50. So if we're comparing what we would call SRP or RRP prices, I'm going to say that this is £50 and this is, in round figures, £150, 3 times the price. And when we open this lens cover, it's the same sort of mechanism, and you can see straight away. You try and move that over, and you ended up in the flash mode, and you've got to push it back, and you have to use this switch every time you turn the camera on, whereas this switch, turn it off, oh, did it just then, it's a lot more positive. And when we look at the lenses on these, you might be able to see this one has a slight purple tint. I'll take this filter off. We'll come to that later, which this one doesn't. This has a multi-coating, which this hasn't got, an anti-reflective coating. And when I tested these, I put a film through both of them, although it wasn't entirely successful because of defective film. But when I tested these, I would say this was slightly less prone to flare. Now, Film Never Die have made a big splash, a lot of statements about developing this new spherical glass multi-coated lens and how much better it is than their previous reloadable camera and how much better it is than other reloadable camera lenses. I have to be honest, apart from it's a little less prone to flare in extreme lighting conditions, I don't see that it's any sharper. If it is any sharper, it's not enough for somebody with my experience of 40 years to particularly notice on a basic scan. So I don't think you're going to get super sharp pictures compared to, say, a Contax T2 or a Mu2 or a Nikon L35 AF. These are very much simple lenses, simple single element lenses. This happens to be glass, this happens to be plastic. The multi-coating is a little bit of a nice touch though. But you can see when we go around these cameras, the screws are in the same place, the door catch is in the same place, the window, the screw here, the viewfinder, the flash ready light, the triangular screw arrangement on the base plate, the rewind button. These are both based on the same basic cameras as I believe the Kodak S88 is as well. So we are going to have to work hard to justify 3 times the price. A nicer switch and slightly less lens flare probably hasn't done it just... That switch is so annoying. Probably hasn't done it just yet. But this is much nicer to look at. The test I like to use is if you turn up at Taylor Swift's birthday party, are you more likely to get through the door with this camera or with this camera? This just looks nicer, and to some people that has a value. You can buy a basic supermarket own brand t-shirt for £8 perhaps, or you can buy one with a fancy logo on for £45. Ostensibly, they're both cotton t-shirts. You pay your money, you take your pick. If you like things that look a little nicer, a little more stylish, this might appeal to you. Or you may even feel that this is more stylish, I don't know. Depends how you feel about green, I guess. Other differences, Harman do say on their packaging, the EZ35 camera is not designed to be repaired or refurbished. If you have a functional issue within 60 days of purchase, Please contact your retailer with confirmation of the issue and proof of purchase to receive a replacement product. So Harman, we did previously review another Harman / Ilford product, which was the Sprite 35 to another reusable camera, but a manual wind one. That had a very modest warranty as well. When we look at the warranty for the Nana, it basically comes with a 2-year warranty. Now what I can't tell you is how you would claim that, whether you just email them and they send you a new camera or a refund, or they would ask you to send the camera to Australia. I don't know. There is at least one retailer of these cameras in the UK, and they may in effect be their agent for that sort of thing. Now I did do some testing, basic testing with these cameras, and the first thing I tested was the flash output. As you can see, the flash units, well, they are again basically the same flash unit, they are slightly different flash diffusers, so maybe that will make a difference. I did shoot some video on a phone whilst I was doing this, and honestly it's terrible, so I'm not going to show it to you. But the thing with flash output is it's determined by how much light goes through the lens and how sensitive the film is, and lastly the distance of the flash to the subject. Now on these sorts of cameras the flash is in the camera, so although technically you would say flash to subject distance, camera to subject distance would be equally applicable here. Now, the minimum distance at which you can get acceptably sharp pictures from this guy is 2 meters according to Film Never Die. And we have a fixed f11 lens. That's not very bright. So at 2 meters we need to get a flash reading of f11 in order for this to illuminate the subject on its own without any additional lighting. That assumes a 400 ASA film, and I'm assuming that people using these cameras are going to use a film like Ultramax or Ilford HP5 or XP2, that sort of thing. Now unfortunately at 2 meters this fell short. It came in at f8 and at 3 meters 5.6, but it did better than this guy. This was a whole stop darker, so at 2 meters this was 5.6, and at 3 meters it would have needed an aperture of f4. I'll put that in some sort of context for you. This is a lens from a single lens reflex camera, and you've probably heard of compact cameras, point and shoot cameras with f2.8 lenses, the Contax T2, the Nikon L35, the Mu2, Olympus, and so on and so forth. And as you can see here, this is f2.8. And that means that the hole that the light comes through the aperture is basically as big as the back of the lens. These cameras that don't have f2.8, they have f11, which is that size, much smaller. For the flash unit on the Nana to be the sole source of illumination, even at the closest distance for acceptable sharpness, you need to be there. We're not there. We're there. So we're getting 1 stop under exposure. At 3 meters, we're getting 2 stops under exposure. And then we go to this guy. At 2 meters, we're where this is at 3, and at 3 meters, we're miles off. So if we're relying solely on the flash units on these cameras, we're going to find that our pictures are underexposed. But the Nana is going to be better than the EZ35. Now where the flash unit and aperture combination do come into their own, certainly more so on this one, is in fill flash. So if you're in daylight and somebody's wearing a hat and their face is in shadow, pop the flash unit on and you get a nice balance between the flash illuminating the shadows and the ambient light illuminating everything else. So that is pretty cool. Now another feature of the Film Never Die is it has a filter thread. It comes with a protective filter, quite nice I guess. But if I take that off, I'm left with a 30mm thread, and that's a very unusual size of filter thread. And some unkind commentators have said, well, I'm not paying all that money just to get a camera with a filter thread. I can just buy a cheaper camera and a bit of sellotape and stick a filter on the front of that if I wanted to. You wouldn't use this filter. This is just a protective filter. But if this was like a colour correction filter or maybe a yellow filter for black and white photography, the argument is you would stick it on there. You could even take a filter gel and stick that on the front with a bit of sellotape. You cut it to size obviously, but you've got a few issues with that. It's very hard to get this centered on the lens. It's very hard to get it parallel to the film plane. So if you start getting this at odd angles, if it's rolling to one side or the other on this curved body, you're going to start introducing glass air interfaces that could cause flare and ghosting, and it's just inconvenient. It's just a bit of a pain to do that. Now with this we can get 30mm filters, but they're not very common. But there is a little cheat for less than £5. I bought this adapter ring, and it does slightly obscure the viewfinder. I have to be perfectly honest, it's not a perfect solution. Can't screw it on now. There we go. And now with my 49mm filters, it could be protection filter with this. If you've got a little bit of grease, a little bit of perhaps Vaseline, and you smeared it on an old unwanted protection filter, you can get a very dreamy soft focus look. You could with the hammer as well. I'm saying it's special to this camera. But you could get, if you're shooting black and white, a yellow filter or a red filter to increase contrast, and the filter is going to be parallel to the film plane, and there's not going to be any gaps behind the filter for light to get in and start causing ghosting and flare. So that's a pretty handy thing. There's another thing you can do with this. I'd like to show you this picture quickly. Now this isn't a crop of a big picture showing one of these focus targets. This is the focus target at 10cm, and it's surprisingly sharp. And the way I did that was I bought a cheap set of basically magnifying glasses. These are called close-up filters. Traditionally, they're very noisy. Traditionally they come in sets of 3. So this, I don't know if you can read it, is a +1. This is a +2. There's a +4 here. And this particular set came with a +10 as well. And what that means is it's a fraction of a metre. So 1 unit is a metre. So if we were to take a piece of paper and try and write this in a way that will come out on camera. So we've got 1 metre as our sort of basic unit of measurement. And let's say we're using the +1 filter. We've got 1 over 1 equals 1. So if you use the +1 filter, we get sharp results 1 metre from the lens. If we use our +2, well, 1 over 2 is a half, isn't it? So that's 0.5 of a metre or 50cm. +4, 1 over 4, is 25cm, or 1/4 of a metre. And +10 is 1/10 of a metre, or 10cm. So hopefully you can see there that we're using a very simple calculation. The plus diopter number is giving you a fraction of 1 metre, which is your focus distance. And that means we can take pictures of this signpost and have the text on the signpost reasonably sharp at 1 metre. Remember, the recommended minimum distance to use this camera is 2 metres. We can photograph a flower, or we can photograph even a Rubik's Cube. I think the flowers with the +10 and the Rubik's Cube was the +4. One thing to bear in mind, the viewfinder and the lens are looking at different things. So if the viewfinder is seeing this, the lens is seeing this. It doesn't matter at 2 metres, it matters a lot at a metre and less. So you have to ignore the viewfinder and just sort of say, well, yeah, okay, I'm 10 centimetres away, press the button, and kind of hope for the best. So that's a handy little close-up hack, if you will, to get a little bit more out of the camera. I believe FND sort of saying, well, we like to make a close-up filter or a closer focus lens. We need to raise funds for R&D and so on and so forth. Well, I saved them some trouble. That set of close-up filters was less than £10. The stepping ring's very handy. This disc goes to 49mm. Those filters are the cheapest I could find, which go to 58mm, so I had to stack my stepping rings to use them. You would get slightly better results if you bought better filters in a single step unit, so if you bought them 49mm for example. So there we have it. What I would say is this is a metal plate on the front and the top and the sides. It feels heavier, it is heavier, it feels stiffer, but also it seems to hold the camera together better. When I was using the Harman, I found that as I pressed the shutter and it wound on, it could be hesitant and it felt like it was about to die or not quite wind the film on. Really didn't feel good, in a similar way that this switch is just the most annoying switch in the world. Remember, you have to use this every time you use the camera. So this feels positive, it feels like it's working. This little red light there, I don't even know if you can see it. It's meant to be a red eye reduction, so if you are using flash, it's a bit brighter. So it's meant to contract the subject's pupil so less light bounces off the back of their eye. I'm never entirely convinced by red eye reduction on any camera. There you have it. So I try to rush through this a little bit by way of compensation for myself really, because I did make a very long rambling video with lots of diagrams, so I hope this gives you a feel for it. If you're buying a single-use camera, this could be a good choice, but do bear in mind it's not perfect. If you want something a little bit more long-term perhaps, and you want one that's better finished, looks better, feels better, has a handy filter thread, a more powerful flash unit, sure, it's 3 times the price. Is it worth 3 times the price? Well, to be honest, that's for you to decide. I'm not 100% certain that it is, but I'm 100% certain I did enjoy using it. When I was walking around with this, it was quite fun to have this bright gold camera. I've previously published a video showing a slideshow of the pictures I've taken with this, so I'll link it at the end of this picture. What you will find, as with all these reusable cameras with a single element lens, it's reasonably sharp in the middle and it gets really quite soft at the edges, and you'll also see a kind of a little bit of a rainbow effect, which is a chromatic aberration. That gets worse at the edges. There's 1 or 2 pictures I think are worth mentioning. This one, a classic example of lens flare, so the sun's in the top left of the subject, but it's shining on the building behind me, which is glazed, and that light is reflecting back onto the wall opposite, which is illuminating the wall. So I thought that was really quite an attractive bit of lighting. Of course, with the sun in the frame as it is, we've got this strange lens flare in the bottom left, and we can see there's a little bit of lens flare in the top left. But I have to say, given the position of the sun, that lens flare is much more, I beg your pardon, controlled than one would expect. On this picture, which was taken with the first roll of film, the film itself was defective, but the red spot in the middle is the sun peeking through the leaves, and again, seems to be controlling the flare better than one might expect. I'm going to show you a couple more pictures from this roll. As I say, there is a whole slideshow, about 2 minutes worth, and this is really pushing the limit of that f11 lens. So I really didn't expect this to come out at all. It is a little bit underexposed, and you can see all these pictures on that slideshow video. Anyway, for now, thank you for watching. I hope you found this of interest or use. I do appreciate your time. Do have a good day.